period that preceded President Obama coming into office, there had been 3 devastating wars, 2 in Gaza and 1 in Lebanon, that had been rather traumatic for the region. And I mentioned the loss of prestige for our country. This is the setting that Obama inherited in 2009. First thing he did was go to Cairo, where he tried to start and turn a new page. I debated many people in the day he gave the speech and the days after that on CNN and NBC and CBS and whatever. People gave him no ground at all. He was selling out America, they said. And the counter-assault began even before he had returned to the country. Gone were the days of, giving an American leader ground when he was overseas to establish himself. And so he was rebuffed on Guantanamo, rebuffed on torture, and rebuffed on trying to reach out to the Muslim world. We were stuck with the status of forces agreement that had already been signed with Iraq. We had made an agreement that we would leave at the end of 2011. I fault the administration not for leaving because that was the agreement we reached. The Iraqis were having no renegotiation of that agreement. They wanted us out. Maliki knew he was going to be in power. He wanted to stay in power. It was going to be a manipulative game on his part in order to do it, but he knew he could manage it. But he didn't want American forces there in the country. He was staking his claim on being independent of American forces. And he succeeded because we didn't have a choice. We couldn't renegotiate. They didn't want to renegotiate. My fault, the way I fault the administration is not for leaving, but for not taking advantage of the 2 years before we left to accomplish more.
Hello and welcome to the Orange County Crosstalk Show. I'm Alex Bolourchi. I have again the pleasure to have Dr. James Zogby here, who was the keynote speaker at World Affairs Council in Orange County. And last year I remember we talked about your latest book.
It was called Arab Voices.
Exactly.
And it was about Arabs, what Arabs really think and how we ought to be listening to their voices.
That was a wonderful and very informative presentation, as well as tonight that you gave a very in-depth speech about the Syria and Egypt the situation and how the United States really is dealing with this situation.
Or not dealing with
Not dealing, exactly. Now my question was, right now lots of confusion you hear lots of different voices and signals from Washington, D.C. and from the representative, Senate, and all the other. So I was wondering, if you were going to give advice to Barack Obama about the Syrian situation, what would be the most critical thing that you wanted?
It was to pay attention to the Lavrov-Kerry agreement to convene Geneva II, and to use all of the political weight and the economic power that we have to put pressure on the parties, all of the parties, the Russians, the Iranians, the Saudis, the Qataris, the Turks, etc., to convene a negotiated solution to the conflict. Secretary Kerry said as much. He said in his speech, he said our primary objective is a negotiated solution. Therefore, everything we do should be focused on that, on a negotiated solution. And the question would be, if we bomb, does it help us get to the negotiated solution, or does it pull us away? I think it pulls us away, and so what we ought to be doing is focusing on that. What do we have to do to get the parties to negotiate?
The illusions that exist, the myths about America, you will get people in Syria, just as people in Egypt say that America was on the side of the Muslim Brotherhood and we took a side in whatever, which we didn't. We just didn't know. We weren't as smart as people think we are. In Syria, this notion of us being all-powerful is an equally dangerous myth. You could stop this if you wanted to, the opposition says. You could help us win if you wanted to. But let's think about what winning means. Winning means we own it, like we did in Iraq. And as I've been telling people from the beginning, we have the military might to win, but we don't have the political resolve to spend 10 years trying to manage your country. The American people would not tolerate it. I don't think they would. And I don't think they should. The fact is that what we need to be doing is stop people from pouring gasoline on the fire and not bring our own gas pump. That would be the smart thing to do.
I heard again a lot of representative and different senators saying that, first of all, they said we're going to Syria because of democracy. Now I heard also the story that they are going to weaken the Syrian because they want to get to Iran. They want to send the message to Iran. What is your take on this one?
Well, I think that there is that part of it, the sense that this is a war to bleed Iran and to weaken Iran. But the bottom line is that it will not serve that purpose. What it will do is create deeper divisions in the region and cause those divisions to fester. So the issue here is, I mean, you always have two choices with a conflict. You can either pour gasoline on it or you can try to put it out. I believe in putting it out. And I strongly believe right now that the longer this goes on, the more dangerous and volatile the region becomes. And this is not going to bleed Iran as much as it's going to cause consequences in Lebanon, in Jordan, in Turkey, and in Iraq as well, that will be with us for decades to come. And so this is not a winning strategy to bleed Iran.
And so a negotiated solution, as Kerry and Lavrov agreed earlier this year at Geneva, is the only way to go, and we ought to be expending all of our political might, all of our resolve to get an all-party conference to negotiate that settlement. It'll be imperfect, it won't make anybody happy, but it will stop the killing, and that's what needs to happen. Understand that we do not have the role that we want to believe we have in the Middle East. We are not the all-powerful country that can resolve everything. No, John McCain, the solution to every country is not for America to declare a no-fly zone and start bombing. That's not the solution right now for America. We need to take a time out. And we need to develop, as we should have developed years ago, a strategic vision for the future. So that when we do what we do, it fits into a schema of where do we want to be 5 years from now? And then design a strategy that helps us to that goal and not keep going piece by piece by piece with, Senator such and such saying we got to bomb them and passing a resolution that we got to bomb them and then getting cornered into Libya and doing something there and then doing something in Egypt and frankly not doing anything right because we're not in a position to make it right. And it's not a sign of weakness. Being smart doesn't mean you bomb people. Being smart means you think about what you're doing and you make it make sense to you and your future. What could have been a really important debate about Syria became a farce because of hyperpartisanship. With people who had been calling on the president to bomb Syria for the last year, with the exception of John McCain, who was the only consistent one, the rest of them turned and said, we have no place in Syria. We should not be involved in this. Where 2 months ago they were calling for bombing it when the president was opposed to it. It's like, whatever position you've got, I'm going to be in the other side of it. That's not the way to run a country.
If you were in the position to, let's say, give some advice to the rulers in the Middle East, what would be that? Let's reverse the situation.
Put the fire out. Realize that this is not winning anything, and what it's going to do is create consequences that we'll be living with for a long time. You do not want to have Lebanon explode. You do not want to have Jordan unravel. You do not want to see a civil war in Turkey between its minority groups and the ruling government. You do not want to see Iraq any further destabilized. It already is destabilized. This is playing with fire, and it is going to burn everybody.
So in other words, you're saying calm it down, bring it down, and start sitting and negotiate.
And it won't be perfect, and it'll leave bad blood because people are angry. But it is better to calm it down and live with trying to resolve the differences that exist through a negotiated settlement than it is to keep this fighting going on.
Egypt needs jobs. Egypt needs water purification systems. Egypt needs health care. Egypt needs education. Egypt needs things that will grow their economy. And yet what we've done is cut off the economic aid and then keep doing the military aid. And just this week, AID suspended the Higher Education for Development program, $300 million spent in countries all over the world where we actually do programs that help people grow in their country, to do things like agricultural sciences and water purification and healthcare development, etc. That the amount of money that we're spending right now with 5 warships in the Mediterranean, in 2 months' time, if they're still there, that would have been as much money as it takes to run that program for a whole year. And if we actually start a war, guess what? That program will have been able to be run for 3 years with what we spend in a month bombing Syria. It makes no sense to have our priorities be backward. What the world wants from us is our knowledge. We talk about our values. That's what they want from us, is the value we place on knowledge, technology, the knowledge we place on advancement and on meeting people's needs. That's what they want, but that's not what they're getting.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zogby, for your time, and it was nice again meeting you.
And finally, with regard to Syria, we had a press for a negotiated settlement. It's the only way out of this, and it's the only way to end it. We ought to hope that the Kerry-Lavrov meetings produce an agreement to get rid of these weapons of mass destruction in Syria. And I believe that what we ought to do is refer Bashar al-Assad to the International Criminal Court as a war criminal and begin to prepare the documents now. Bomb him, and he only becomes a hero. Declare him a war criminal and send him to the criminal court and prepare the documents now, and you humiliate him. That's what needs to happen. With regard to Egypt, I think we need to recognize the limits of our capacity to make change, to recognize that our standing is so low, and given the reality that we're facing, we have to figure out a long-term strategy to improve our standing in the region, because it's important to us for all the reasons you declared. And it's to do what we do best. It's to develop a job-creating program. It's to develop an educational advancement program and to work cooperatively with our universities and with our professionals to develop a program for Egypt, not unlike we did during the Peace Corps period, that helps bring the best of America and sends a different message. We have to turn the tide of public opinion in that country, and the best way to do it is through goodwill. We've done it in the past and we can do it again. Those are the thoughts I'm laboring with right now, and I'd be happy to take your questions.